I just wanted to say hello. Welcome to another Aspen gathering. Hope everyone's doing okay today. Thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs up. Yeah. Hey, Jonathan says thumbs up. That's good. Hey, Rebecca has thumbs up. Awesome. Oh my gosh, look at all the thumbs. I have never given the thumbs up before. Oh, it's the reactions. Yes. I never used a reaction. That's great. Today, Mark is not going to be here. He is at a conference in Colorado, so he's here with us in our hearts. So, but he's spreading Aspen goodness over in Colorado for their state conference. So we'll look forward to hearing about his experience there. Do any of you know anyone who is going to that conference?
I think Bob from Click went.
Oh, okay. Cool.
They had a booth there too.
Oh, nice. Yeah. It'll be fun one day when, more conferences can start happening. Well, let's just get right down to business then. So on our agenda, which I think, let me see, I'm going to share a link to this in the chat. So just in case you don't already have. Oh, there it is. There's the agenda for today. So new business. If you weren't here last time, or if you just haven't heard for some reason, we are working on an app. It is in test flight right now. I think, we're still it's obviously still in testing. So if you have been playing around with the app, if you downloaded it, there might be some little things that we're just ironing out right now. Has anyone here been able to test the app yet? Have any thoughts, experiences that you want to share? Feedback? Maybe this is an easier question. Like, has anyone downloaded the app yet? Okay. Aaron asks, is there a doc outlining how to get the app and test it? So there was some information about how to get access to the app in one of the last Aspen weeklies. Let me get the link for that.
So while you're doing that, I downloaded the app and it had been working fine until an update. And now it hangs at the select your library screen, and I can't advance past that. I tried re-downloading the app. I don't know if you covered that, as didn't have audio at the beginning. But
yeah, that is an issue that's happening right now. Kirsten has been working on the app pretty much nonstop, trying to troubleshoot what's going on there. I don't know if you have any updates or anything to add about that, Kirsten.
I don't, but I am working on it. Hopefully soon I can get that fixed for everybody. It works for some people and doesn't work for others.
Yeah, are you trying to access that, Sam? Do you have an iPhone or are you on Android?
I'm on Android.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. All right, yeah. Well, Kirsten's gonna get it fixed soon. I just know it because she's been doing nothing but app stuff. So I'm really excited for. James says I logged into it just now on an Android phone. Okay. So yeah, it's really weird how some people seem to have access and some people don't. So we'll get it figured out though. This is why it's in the testing phase. But yeah, if you are one of the lucky ones who is able to get in and log in, definitely play around with it and tell us what you think. And thank you, Jesse. Jesse put a link for the directions to download the app in the chat. So if you need that, head there. And if it's not working for you quite yet, then try it again, like every single day until it works. Eventually it will. All right, let's see here. Next on the agenda, unless anyone has any more questions about the app. Yeah, Yeah, that's what I see too, Sam. That happens to me on my old iPhone. All right. So if you have questions about that, you can ask them at any time. But otherwise, let's keep going on. This is another one that I don't quite know if Kirsten has anything she wants to speak on about it, since Mark isn't here, about the release. Because 2111 is released and 2112 is coming. I believe that y'all had plans to release that next week. You know if that's still happening, Kirsten?
I think the day is still tentatively the 16th.
So that could potentially be when the next release is coming. I think we're pushing it out faster than normal just because of conference schedules. Because otherwise it would have been an even longer wait in between releases. And you all know us, we like to just get stuff out to you as fast as we can. Anything exciting coming up in that release that you know of, Kirsten? We can tease out. Sorry, I'm putting you on the spot so much.
I've been focusing so much on the app.
Fair. So, well, if you come to our Aspen updates in an instant, when it happens next week, then you'll be the first to know exactly what's coming up in the release. So watch our social media, our website, all that good stuff. If you want to hang out for the Aspen updates in an instant. And that's for anyone who doesn't happen to know already that's here. Every time we have a release, we try to just have a live 15 minutes or less recap of the most cool, important new things coming out in each release. So you are always welcome to join us live for those, or we always post the recordings too. All right, so let's get on to some discussion. So the next item on our agenda, we've had some questions posed to us by some of you in the past. And so we just wanted to put it out to the community and see what you think. So here's our first discussion topic, and I really hope it gets heated. I hope you guys just really dig into each other about this stuff because we want to know how you feel. So should graphic novels and e-comics be grouped with the regular book in the grouped work display? And here's a point to consider. Let me read the chat really quick. Okay, Kristen says, if our library does not appear in the drop-down list of options in the app, can we get access to the Bywater test library? Yes.
Yeah, for sure. So if y'all want access to the test site, you can either just ping one of us on Slack, or you can send us an email, submit a ticket. But Kristen, I'll go ahead and get y'all set up and I'll send you an email with the info.
Thanks, Addie. All right. And so Addie is the best, isn't she? She really is. So then there was a no in the chat from Cecil. I'm assuming that wasn't responding to Kristen. That was probably responding to our heated debate question, which let me repeat it. Yes, Rhonda says our graphic novel collection developers don't want them grouped. And here's the thought about why they aren't already grouped in Aspen. So let's say you had to do a book report. They're probably going to want you to read the book and not the graphic novel. The idea being that as far as their content, even though they're related, they're not really the same. And that's also why Aspen doesn't, like say for, Harry Potter, the DVDs, the movies will not be grouped with the books, because even though they're both Harry Potter content, they're not the same thing. Sam's given a thumbs up. Does anyone feel differently? Has anyone wished for that they wanted the graphic novels to be grouped with the books? Cricket. All right. Speak now or forever hold your peace. Status quo is the way to go, says Jonathan. All right. Yeah.
I mean, I can say right now that the graphic novels are grouping with our books, and that is not the way that we want it to be. Our problem is that we cannot ungroup them.
Oh, no.
Yes, let's not group graphic novels with books.
Have
That's
you,
unique to our library, but yeah, this is a huge headache for us. And if there was a way to tell those apart, that would be really helpful.
so has it been working for you to manually ungroup them for now?
We can get some of the formats to ungroup. So we can get like the overdrive version to be separate, but it is because the way of our indexing profile. But the graphic novel version will always group with the book, right? And then also the way that our ILS works, when someone puts a hold on, then they don't know which version they're going to get. We can't control where that hold is going to go. The current situation here is painful. So if we could fix that, that would be really good. This does not happen with all titles, only a few, but of course it's the exceptions that cause headaches.
Okay. So I know that you all talk to Mark sometimes. Is this something that you've addressed with him already in the past?
Yeah, I mean, I think the result of those conversations were that we would talk about it at the Aspen gathering.
Oh.
So I'm just reiterating that, yeah, let's not group graphic novels with the original book that they're based on.
Okay, I hear you. Yeah. Yeah, I wish Mark was here today. We will definitely, yeah, because at the very least, if you're manually ungrouping them, they should stay ungrouped. So at just that level, I would say we need to make sure that's addressed. But otherwise, yeah, it would be, I agree. If you don't want them to be grouped, we should find a way for that to not happen. So we'll keep on that, Brian. Thank you. Let's see, Aaron in the chat says, what are some example titles for this grouping of graphic novels? You know, I don't have an example of any that, I've heard of anyone saying that they wanted to be grouped. So I don't know if one of y'all had suggested that, if they're here right now, but maybe they're not here. Oh, of the problem Brian noted. So Brian, what do you have examples of titles that are grouping that you don't want them to be grouped?
Yeah, I'm gonna drop one in the chat.
Okay.
So you have to scroll down on the record and you'll see where the graphic novels group with everything else. But also the way it's fine. I'll just put it in the chat.
All right, Brian is going to put it in the chat. Yeah, I'm curious too, so I will also view that link as well. We'll try to see what's going on there, Brian. And then Aaron, yeah, since you were curious, you can check that out as well. I'm gonna click that. Let's all click. Oh, for the e-comic? Is that the one you're referring to that's staying grouped, Brian?
Yeah, so that's the one that's we would prefer if was not grouped.
Huh. All right. And you've manually tried to ungroup this one?
Yeah, I mean, Addie has helped us with this. We have a few like this. We just have a few, and that really they're. I don't know if this is worth everybody's time. I think that these are usually outliers. There are a few outliers that are just really tough, and they're graphic novels that are based on literary works, right, or books before. So right now, when I glance at this, and this has been through a few iterations, it looks like because it's not here, the print graphic novel we probably have successfully ungrouped, manually, but we cannot get the overdrive version to group with the manually ungrouped print version.
Okay. Yeah, we'll definitely dig into that because that should not be happening. They should be able to be grouped together. Very interesting. I'm glad to hear that these are outlier cases, so definitely not something we want to have to deal with all the time. But thank you for sharing that. It's grouping in our catalog too, says Chanel. All right. And Chanel, when you say it's grouping, are you talking about just the e-content is grouping with the regular print formats?
So in our case, we have the graphic novel, the physical graphic novel, and it is grouping with the book, the audiobook, the ebook, the whole shebang.
Of The Handmaid's Tale? Oops.
Mm-hmm.
See. So we have, ooh, oh yeah, graphic novel, okay. And have you tried to manually ungroup it, Chanel?
No, because this is the first I have even thought about this.
All right, well, yeah, I would give that a try and see if you can successfully ungroup it, because it would be interesting to see. Yeah.
But of course, my next question is, how rampant is this? Like, is it just happening haphazardly, in which case we can fix them as we catch them, but we don't want to have to hand edit every graphic novel every library owns.
Yeah, so I think perhaps what has been happening is that this is the default that Aspen tends towards. So we're thinking that, maybe Mark wanted us to pose this to make sure that it doesn't happen going forward. So it sounds like there's a very strong, we don't want these grouped with the regular print stuff. Am I hearing everyone correctly?
I think it can go either way. I mean, as a Ferber argument, it is a different expression of the work. But on the flip side, I can see that, that a kid that has to read A Handmaid's Tale and a graphic novel would really suck them in. That would be a great discovery. So
Yeah.
I see both sides of the issue, but I think if you're going to be a cataloging nerd, it probably should not be grouped together.
Yeah, I definitely see both sides of the argument. Does anyone else have a stance or agree with what Chanel said? Let's see, Aaron says, Swan is not grouping the graphic novel as a graphic novel for this Handmaid's Tale example. Arlington would not want our graphics grouped. And let me look at the link that Aaron put in the chat. Huh. Okay, so theirs is separate. Interesting. I wonder in this case for Swan if someone had gone in and manually ungrouped it before, or if it just happened that way. Kristen says ours is separate as well. So if I'm ever curious if something has been manually ungrouped, you can always look for, and maybe some of you know this, and maybe some of you don't. So let me go into the record for this. So I'm taking this record number here, and if I want to know that this has been manually ungrouped at some point in time, I'm just going to show you how to do that. So when you manually group or ungroup things, it's going to make kind of a faux authority rule for those records. My gosh, my brain is leaving my skull right now. Really? Let's see. Manual.
I think it's under the catalog group work section. That's all I know to go for. Yeah,
manual
records to
grouping
not group.
authorities. There we go. I was like searching for the wrong words. Okay. So I copied that record ID. So if I don't want to scroll through all of these, which luckily there's not that many, but I can always, if we pretended there was like 500 here, which some libraries there have been, I can add a filter, select the filter by record ID, add the filter, and then paste in the record ID. So if I apply that, it has not been manually ungrouped. So that's a clue that for some reason in this instance, it has not been manually ungrouped. It just was not grouped with the other works. So let's look and see why they wouldn't have grouped together is my next thing here. So we have author is Renee. It's probably different authors, perhaps. Yeah. So that's why they weren't grouped, because the author is cataloged. I'm guessing maybe that's the illustrator or like another author that was kind of reimagining it in graphic novel form. Because when Aspen is grouping things together, it's looking at commonalities in the title and the author field. So if yours are grouping or not grouping, that's something that you can look at to also help influence the behavior by default. Or just if you're wondering, why didn't these things group, if you wanted them to be grouped.
It would be interesting to see if you could do some sort of relevancy ranking for the graphic novels so that they get as close to the original as possible, rather than, because I mean, it doesn't matter. Like if you want, I was explaining to someone today, like if you want Jane Austen's Emma, you'll take whichever Phantom Puffin, it doesn't really matter. You just want to read it. But if you want, the graphic novel of Dracula versus like Bram Stoker's original, like that's a very different interpretation, but it'd be cool to discover them near each other.
Right. And I feel like, and I can't speak to this in a programming type of way because I'm not Mark, though I wish I was sometimes. I feel like it does take into account on some level, but yeah, as far as like whether they're grouped or not, we definitely, encourage people, like if these versions of things are so different that you don't even think they should be in the same grouped work display, then definitely ungroup them. You have the power to do that. But I definitely also see what you're saying, like, yeah, maybe it's not this version, but it's also very closely related. Maybe it could be second or something. I mean, and if you do find a specific case where something like that is way further down the results, but you think it should be closer to what it's related to, you can always let us know and we can take a look and see, why are these things so far apart? They should be closer together. And we can maybe take a look at adjusting, like boosting the formats or all that good stuff. Let's see, I'm gonna check in the chats. Rhonda says, so if we ungroup something and then decide we really did want to group it, do we have to remove fake authority record before we do that? So I want to say at some point there was a fix where if you ungrouped something and decided to group it again, that Aspen would override that, like undo it, but I don't quote me on that. If I will say this though, if you are trying to group something together and you're noticing it's not grouping, that's something that you can check. You can check to see if it did appear in records not to group, because if there is an entry there, then chances are that conflict is preventing them from grouping. So that's how I approach it, is I just try to group it. If it's not grouping, I check records not to group to see if there's an entry, and then I just delete it. Because as soon as you delete it, you should not have a problem getting those records to group again.
Morgan, in our recent experience, if you ungroup the records, you have to go into the fake authority thing and delete those before you're able to group them once more.
Okay. Oh, got it. Yeah. Okay, so maybe that's how it is now. It sounds like you would need to look for that fake record to delete it. Okay. Oh, and Rhonda says that explains what we are seeing. Okay. Yeah, I'm not quite sure what the logic, like the programming logic would have to happen. Like if you ungroup something manually and then decide you want to group it again, I don't know if there's a way to have it automatically delete that entry so that they could group. But that's definitely, I'm going to make a note about that just to explore that as a possibility. Because I feel like that has the potential to be confusing. If you're trying to group something and you don't remember that you ungrouped it. So the grouping. All right, we'll look into that. Let's check the chat. Okay, it is worth noting Swan has been RDA compliant with all new records, and we use Marchive to help with authority updates. Aaron says, any catalog / OPAC change will expose issues within your bibliographic database. This happens with every OPAC change. You end up doing some data cleanup, discuss cataloging practice with your catalogers, etc. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, during implementations, it is, you know, an experience that some people have where, especially if you're in a consortium and you're trying to get, you have lots of different catalogers doing things different ways. It can be a challenge to try to get everyone on the same page. Definitely. All right, so it sounds like there's not a super clear consensus in favor one way or the other of graphic novels automatically being grouped with the print format, but it does sound like you want the choice. Maybe the choice, but slightly in favor of not being grouped is what I'm hearing. So we will pass that feedback on to Mark. And Kirsten is here and she is absorbing this as well. The logic behind the grouping should be better explained. Could you expand on that, Aaron? As far as the logic, like what would you like us to clarify?
I think your demo of showing where you can take a record number and show grouping was very helpful, because you need to be able to, you know, show how you track down where it occurs. But then I think there should also be a component where you're able to show two bibliographic records side by side of it, like for example, of a graphic novel, and the differences between one record, let's say in Nashville's catalog versus Swan's, and be able to highlight the areas of the mark where maybe the grouping could be influenced.
So as far as, so for grouping is based on the title and the author. So let me get a link. It's in our help. So
I'm not suggesting you do that now. I'm just saying,
Oh.
I think it's an opportunity for Bywater, if you're going to go down this road of, you know, having to feel like you have to write code to do this, it may be helpful just to explain when graphic novels start to do this.
Right, and I think the issue, and maybe I haven't been clear, it seems like graphic novels, like any other format, are grouping or not based on the same parameters. So I think Mark was just trying to suss out how people felt about whether they should be grouped like normal with the other things, because I think by default, like DVD and media content is not grouping with the print content. So I think Mark was just trying to figure out, should graphic novels also be treated similarly to DVDs in that they should not group automatically with the other print content or, you know, digital content. Does that make a little more sense?
Yes.
Okay. Very good. Yeah, because otherwise the, you know, grouping behavior, it's still based on the same old stuff that you're familiar with. The title and the author, kind of the common denominators there. So we will pass all of this information on. Let's see, what is Addie telling me? Oh yeah, and also if you're ever curious about, you know, what the common denominator Aspen was able to find, like why these things are grouped, you can click into the grouped work display and go all the way down to staff view. And in the grouping information section, so what this means is that for all the things it has grouped together, it found that this was the common title and this was the common author. So it's stripping out all the excess punctuation and dates and other things. And these are like the stripped down common denominator version of these things. So that's why Aspen grouped these together. And like we pointed out, I think in this case, at least, the author is different. Yeah, the author is different. So that's why those should group. All right. Hopefully that cleared some things up. Maybe it's been a while since some of you have seen that kind of stuff. But if you do have more questions about it, definitely pop those in the chat. Let's go back to our agenda. So another fun format question up for discussion. Should Kindle be in the same box as other e-content formats or by itself? Currently, it is by itself. So instead of being up here with, you know, audiobook, well, I guess they're all kind of by themselves. Trying to think of a.
I can't predict when this happens, but under certain circumstances, a sort of bolder text comes up that says ebook, and then it has any ebooks underneath it, but it does not include the Kindle under that heading. It puts the Kindle separate, like you see here. And for me, that seems very confusing to patrons because the Kindle format is an ebook.
Right. So when you see just ebook, it is if there is only one version. So for example, like if you had, I know I did an explanation of this, and Addie, you can jump into if you're able to explain it better in the moment. Because I know sometimes it says overdrive up here instead of ebook.
Yeah, if it was
Okay, I just sent you a search result, and ignore the first ebook and e-audio you hit because those are records we have to suppress and we haven't done it yet. But if you scroll a little bit further down, there's a box that's labeled ebook. In fact, there it is on your screen. So ignore that one. That's the bad ones. But if you go down, these are the correct ones. And so it puts the ebook central and overdrive together, but then it has the Kindle hanging out by itself. And, you know, as a patron, I'm like, why isn't the Kindle up in the ebook section?
Right. Yeah. So that is, I think that's what I was trying to figure out, like the difference, what I was trying to explain and was escaping me, is that when you have more than one format for an ebook, it'll have this separate ebook session, and then it'll have ebook central, overdrive, Hoopla, whatever. If you just have the one format, then it has ebook and then the overdrive. But yeah, in either case, still Kindle is on its own. So that's, and Chanel brought this question to us for discussion. So how do other people feel about this? Do you think it makes more sense for Kindle to be grouped under the ebook category or on its own?
I would say on its own because there's people who use Kindle and there's people who don't use Kindle.
But Kindle, even though it's a different format, is an ebook.
Yeah.
So Chanel, you're saying you would want to see the Kindle, but you want like that physical box to be inside.
Right.
the ebook.
Yes. Yes. So when the person catches that heading ebook, I want Kindle to be one of the choices because the Kindle format is an ebook.
So it'd be like ebook central, overdrive, Kindle, all in that same.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Let's see what's going on in the chat. Okay, so Swan says, I think that makes sense as long as there's a clear Kindle format. Agree, because not everyone has Kindles. Robin says Kindle, yeah, is a specific proprietary format. Only Kindle can use Kindle. I like Kindle separated out. Daniel says, with the ebooks, our users always ask about our ebooks and whether they have a Kindle version. Having them grouped together would make it clear for them. Okay. Looks like we have. Okay. So what I'm hearing is that as long as there's a specific button that says Kindle on it, that's what you want. But whether or not, like you know, it's if it was grouped under this ebook box, that would be okay with you, right? Yeah, Robin says, I agree with what Chanel said of grouping them in the box. Yep, I agree with Chanel as well. Okay. Yes. Yeah, Aaron, we are talking about the box only. So I wish I could just draw around this box, but just this ebook box. So instead of Kindle being in its own box, we're talking about moving Kindle into this box. Oh, the riveting things we talk about. Another vote for yes within the ebook box. All right. It sounds like we have a wonderful consensus here that we like the idea of moving this into that box. So we will pass that on to Mark, and we will get that change developed so that Kindle will not be in its own lonely Kindle box, but it'll still say Kindle. It'll just be with the other ebooks. So it'll have little friends to live with. All right. Hey, we accomplished something. That's great. All right. Man, we've been really like talking for a while. Okay. So I think we'll move on from that because seems easy enough. We consensus on it. The next topic for discussion is a lot of work has been going on with revamping how translations work in Aspen. And it just so happens that today we released another Aspen Weekly about just this topic. So if you want to learn about kind of the history of how translations have worked in Aspen and where they are headed now, I would definitely recommend reading that Aspen Weekly, and I'm sure one of my lovely coworkers will drop a link in the chat for me because they're awesome like that. But as we've been developing this, thank you so much, Jesse, you're awesome. As Mark has been toiling over revamping the translation function, we were wondering if you had any questions about this, and more importantly, since we're trying to make this more of a community-based feature, something that all libraries contribute to and make even better, would there be any interest in, you know, forming a committee, like a group of people, if you happen to have people, volunteers or people at your library who would be interested in contributing to this project? It looks like Felicity might have something to say. Maybe.
I mean, we're into this idea in Montgomery County, Maryland. So we're actively migrating to Koha and Aspen with a go live of October 4th. So it's terribly exciting. But we actually assigned the translation to some folks because we have in Montgomery County, they like certify people as bilingual. They test them and they pay them extra. So we actually know like if someone's like good enough to do the thing, I guess, right? So it's like, yeah. But so we stole, I think, Arlington's Spanish version that we're gonna like work on a little bit and tweak. And then we also have staff doing Amharic and Chinese. I think that was the other ones we're doing right now.
Yeah.
But we wish we could do French, and we don't have staff with the skill set. So if somebody else could like throw that at us, that'd be fantastic.
Awesome. I love that your library system acknowledges that and rewards that. That's super cool. Any French people in the chat today?
And particularly if you have like Afro Franco, we need like Caribbean French and African French. So
Wow. That would be awesome for those communities. Do you have a community that I guess needs that? Obviously, that's really cool.
what's the current count on languages, James?
I always forget the exact number. It's like 179 languages or something that are spoken in the county. The stat that I know I'm correct about is that a third of the people who live in Montgomery County, Maryland, were born in another country. And so it's a
Wow.
super diverse community.
That's incredible. That's
So the
really good
language
data.
translation really helps us with like intergenerational use of the library.
That's amazing. Huh. Have you done any, I don't know, studies or anything on, you know, resources or any ways you've approached anything to serve all those different communities so far?
It's a pretty open-ended question and to think about that. I mean, we have like outreach that we do. There's a whole bunch of county stuff that we also kind of participate with. But we could do a lot more. I mean, one of our major focuses is like where our user base is in the county. So we like track our active users and see where they're at to try to figure out like where we need to focus. And so it'll help to like promote our resources to underserved communities if we can say like, hey, you can actually interact with this thing in your native language.
That's awesome. And I am terrible because I have not had time to read the translations article yet. So I don't know if Mark mentioned this in the article. Maybe if Addie read it, she can confirm. I don't know. But one of the things we've been talking about as a team is the idea of, you know, just because, you know, being able to offer a translated interface for Aspen is amazing. But just translations alone still might not be in service to your community. So the idea of having more customized resources and things based on which translated version of the catalog you're on. You know, things that are focused and serving those specific communities that they are interested in and they would need.
Yeah, we talked about that with like placards because that's like a problem, right? So it's like if the interface is in Spanish, but the placards are still in English. So we have to basically like create placards where it's easy to swap the words out was like a thing that we had thought about too. And so like, I think there's a lot of room here to like do more and more.
Absolutely. I think that's one of our wants and our goals with this is to not just, you know, step one is just to translate, to have translations available, but then step two is to be able to make it easier for you all to really customize the content based on the translation selected too. Yeah, because it's,
Yeah, I think one of the coming enhancements regarding the languages is that you'll soon be able to limit the placards, the forms, the menus based on the language. So you'd be able to say like, hey, this is something that we want to display in the English. This is something we want to display in the whatever. So there would be some duplication of work, but it would make the experience really good for those patrons, you know, being able to specify what they're seeing in those interfaces.
Yeah, keep in mind here that while we really would benefit from multiple language translations and making those available, in our various communities, we're going to have a lot of different languages, you know, spoken, and being able to have the catalog swap and translate. Keep in mind, we've got notices going out that, you know, also need to be taken into account as are we offering that as a service as well, in addition to text notifications. You know, it runs the whole gamut. And I do know that there was a group of libraries, I want to say it was outside the Toronto area, that started going down this path, and they really struggle with the fact that there are multiple languages spoken in their community, but they weren't going to be able to address all 50 of them. So they had to really come up with criteria as far as within their community, what is the cutoff point, for this, because it did mean that there's a lot of resources that are going to be associated with everything I just described.
Yeah, sure. It's definitely, I agree that it's a matter of, you can't translate in every language, but it's nice if you know that you have a more prominent community, that's it, you can offer that to them. So I guess Aspen's goal is just for whoever has the communities and the resources to tackle those things. Or even if you don't have the resources, if you're a smaller library and you don't have any people on staff that can translate things, that's why we want to make it more of a community-based effort. People working together to help each other have access to translations for their catalogs. So I guess I'll circle back to the question. Would anyone here present be interested in joining or, at least meeting about this sort of topic for Aspen as a community? Maybe something you just want to think about. Or if you have staff that you would want to talk to first. Yeah.
I mean, just not to leave you hanging, we have other staff members who are not part of the systems team who are working on this translation, and they are definitely not paid more for doing this, right? And we could approach them about this kind of thing, but I think it's something that, we have to be very sensitive about. So I just cannot speak for them, right? They might be like, yeah, that'd be great. We're really interested in doing that. But they might be like, hey, we already translated this for you. Thanks. I'm not sure how they feel about it, right?
Right.
So that's just the situation here, right?
Mm-hmm. I completely, I hear that too, because we're not trying to solicit free labor from anyone. I don't know. That's kind of the thing with open source software and communities surrounding them. It's like, it's always hard. Obviously we work for a company that supports these services. So, and we have staff that, work on bugs and developments and things, but it's an open community. And I don't know if Jessie is still around, and she might be able to speak to more of that culture, and as far as what things are grant funded, what things are paid, what things are volunteer. How do you balance that? So in the chat, I don't know if Jessie had anything to say about that, but if not, it's okay.
I mean, obviously people can steal whatever we end up doing, so that should help some of you depending on the demographics of your communities. I speak Spanish, and I remember working in systems that didn't pay a differential, and it totally translated things. And so, I mean, it's probably within the scope of assigning to a person if it's a thing that you all need. Obviously you wouldn't have your staff translating a thing for us, but if your system needs X language and they have the skill set, I don't know. I mean, I can't speak to your specific labor environments, but in any case, the language we'll be doing, that would be something that people could benefit from, hopefully.
Yeah. Sorry, I was unmuting, but I could talk for hours about building an open source community. So for years, with the Koha community, as it's grown 20 plus years, we're hitting almost 22 for Koha. Over the years, documentation and things like reports and how things work in the systems, like different plugins, has grown within the community. And there may be systems administrators who have created things and shared them with the systems teams for other Koha, developers. But I think the piece that helps with a growing community like Aspen Discovery is even a little piece, even if it's something that says this is the way we talk to our patrons when we're talking about Aspen Discovery. That one little piece of information that you could share with the group could immensely help like 5 or 6 other libraries. So even if it's just like one piece of like a grouped record that was translated, sharing that with, James or whoever the contact is at the library, and that person, shares it back. That's what builds mountains in the open source community. People get worried and they think that it has to be pages and pages of documentation or translations that they make. One little piece helps. When we talk about building like a manual, the Koha manual started out as something small. Now it's thousands and thousands of pages of screenshots that people have shared, when they've created new notices or whatever it may be. So even if it's just one little piece that you can share back with the community, it is something that will help the community grow as a whole. So I'll leave it at that, and just think of it that way. Even if it's a little piece, it'll go miles.
Thank you. Sorry, I hate putting people on the spot, but I knew you would have something good to say about like the spirit of the open source communities. So I think that is a good thing to remember, and maybe that's just the approach for now. So maybe it's not like a committee where everyone must commit a certain amount of work or do X amount of translations. Maybe it's just we make sure that we keep it in touch with each other, whether it's just at Aspen gatherings or some other way, just to make sure that we are sharing the things that we've made and the translations we have and all that good stuff, because it just makes Aspen better for everybody. So thank you so much for speaking to that, Jesse. Does anyone have any other comments or thoughts on that, or questions for that matter? Let's see. Yeah, it looks like in the chat that it's kind of the same thing that Brian and James were saying. James says, I want to float the idea to the folks we have doing the translations. And Tara says, saying we would be looking to recruit some library staff volunteers. I'm not sure we can rope them into additional meetings. That's totally fair. So just something to think about, and be aware of the direction that we want to head with translations, that we do want to share our resources. And we want to make it easy for you to access the content that other libraries have created and are willing to share. So definitely check out that Aspen Weekly this week about the translations, just so that you can catch up with speed on that. And oh my gosh, we only have 5 minutes left. We've just been discussing up a storm. Here we go. Anyone else have a too many tabs problem all the time? So our last question, and depending on how much you feel like talking about this, maybe we could save it for next time, but we wanted to pose this to you, especially for our live partners. What questions commonly come up from your patrons about Aspen? So when you have to help your patrons or customers use Aspen, what are people struggling with? What are they asking about? Share with us.
What is the difference between newest first and date added? And y'all fixed that. So thank you very much. It's much appreciated.
Very good. I'm glad that got me too.
I think the thing that we run into most often is some of the terminology for it's here or it's available. Does available mean it's here in this building, in this branch? We use Koha on the back end, and Koha is very clear about what branch something resides at. Sometimes Aspen's a little less clear. And when we rely on IP based tricks to parse that out, sometimes that fouls up some other things for patrons. So if anyone's got any good ideas for ways to clarify that, we're all ears.
Make a note about that. Has anyone else run into issues with patrons wondering if something is actually where they expect it to be, or just being confused about that? And so Sam, you're referring to like if someone is browsing the catalog from home or like outside of the, IP specific environment.
Yeah, the idea that, hey, I just looked up and it said the book was available. I walk into the library and it's available somewhere else. And I don't know how we can make that more clear to the patron, or just straight up say available, in our case, in say in Vernal, or in Roosevelt, or whatever location it is. I realize that might not scale up well to some of the huge consortia.
So, genealogy. I just want to take. I'm just gonna creep on you, Entos. So let's see. So on shelf. Okay, so available online. Yeah, okay, I see. I mean, I think with, at least in this case, it is showing your items first, so that does help. And I'm not using like the IP-based trickery to make it so. I guess I just would remind people, at least for now, that you can adjust the labels using the translation feature. And let me show you what I mean by that. So this is like super cheat mode for Aspen. If you hit the translation, like start translation mode, you could potentially change those labels, instead of on shelf, maybe say available at, these libraries, or I don't know what would be more helpful or not, if that would make it worse. But yeah, if you did click on that ID, you could change it to say whatever you wanted it to say. So I don't think there's a downside to using it for that status, because like if they are using IP address functionality, it would say, yeah, I think it would say it's here if you have that on. I'm trying to think if I'm shooting myself in the foot by saying this is a good option, but I think it's okay. So if you wanted to change the wording, you could do that. But I do have a note that maybe we can talk about if there are other options. I don't know if it's possible to do it based on the patron's home library. Maybe that's a thing that could happen in the future. Let's see. Oh my gosh, it's already 5. Let me read this long comment and then I'll set us all free. Okay, so Tara says, we have patrons that search using a format like Handmaid's Tale audiobook, and that almost always makes the search results worse. Oh. Uh-oh. Tara, could you explain what you mean by, are you talking about using the facet limiters?
Nope, I'm just talking about a keyword search. It's a pretty just like Googly behavior. I think people do it all the time. They put in like, the title and then like Kindle, or they think by putting in more specific keywords, they're going to make their search results better, but it doesn't often work that way. And sometimes Aspen does like a really good job with handling like a format and a search, but not always. So that's probably like one of the biggest things patrons get confused about, which I don't know that that's necessarily Aspen specific. It's kind of every library catalog I've used pretty much.
Okay. Huh. I was not. It's been so long that I have been, I guess, just a patron that I haven't thought about it that way. Interesting. So I'm going to make a note about that case specifically. That is, I don't know if Aspen takes that into consideration, but I mean, Margaret's smarter than me, so maybe it does. But we'll talk to him and circle back about this next time. Maybe we can pick up on this conversation. So it's been a full hour of Aspen gathering, so I want to respect everyone's time. Thank you so much for all the discussion today. Of course, if you have any questions about anything we talked about, you are welcome to submit a ticket or ping any one of us in the Slack channel. Otherwise, we look forward to seeing you next month. Thanks so much for participating, everybody. Hope you have a good day.